The Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or the SCO Summit, held in Tianjin on 31st August and 1st September, came at a moment when the world's power map is being redrawn and the very idea of globalization is under dispute. What unfolded was not just another regional meeting but a stage where rival visions of order collided and converged. China and Russia pressed for their case of multipolarity, but India sought a careful middle path and the smaller states carved out space for their own agendas. At the heart of the summit was the Tianjin Declaration, a carefully crafted document that endorsed India's one earth, one family and one future framing, an echo of New Delhi's G20 presidency. This narrative places human solidarity above bloc politics. And the fact that the Indian formula was accepted in a Chinese-hosted summit is quite telling. It reveals Beijing's willingness to soften the SCO's image, projecting it as a civilizational and quiet and inclusive forum rather than merely an anti-Western coalition. The declaration's embrace of cultural dialogue, economic integration, and collective security was not new in substance, but the political weight it carried was significant. It showed that even with a space dominated by Beijing and Moscow, India could set the moral tone. Alongside symbolism carried strategy. The SCO Development Strategy to 2035 was not just a laundry list, but a serious attempt to sketch the organization's trajectory for the next decade. It promised to expand the regional anti-terrorist structure, or RATS as we know it. It is an often overlooked institution that now looks set for a broader mandate on cyber and biosecurity. Now, what is RATS? Established in 2004 and based in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, RATS has been central to intelligence sharing and joint operations against terrorism, separatism, and extremism, making it the SCO's most operational arm. This move acknowledges that the threats confronting Eurasia are not limited to militant groups but extend to digital and even biological domains where state and non-state actors operate alike. The 2035 roadmap also sharpened attention to economic integration, smoother customs, rules, and connectivity projects that could eventually tie Central Asia, South Asia, and even the Middle East into a more coherent trade corridor, explicitly focusing on the international North-South transport corridor, India's Char-Bahar linkages, and Chinese belt and road extensions. Now, China positioned the proposed SCO Development Bank, which is similar to the BRICS New Development Bank and the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. It immediately pushed this with the pledges of 2 billion yen in grants and 10 billion yen in loans to act as a potential financing mechanism. This is for the same trade corridors, custom harmonization, and related infrastructure projects as discussed. This allows China to set the tone while nudging the SCO into becoming a financial as well as political forum. For smaller members like Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, this fund means tangible projects. For India and Russia, they pose a test. The question is whether they are willing to see the SCO evolve into a China-led financial platform or push for a greater balance in its institution design. Bilateral diplomacy provided some of the summit's most closely watched theatre. Narendra Modi's meeting with Xi Jinping was widely interpreted as a reset, the very first genuine thaw since the violent Galwan border clashes of 2020. Agreements to resume direct flights, address India's trade deficit, and maintain border calm were practical, but the optics mattered more. By framing the relationship in terms of partners and not rivals, both the sides signaled that economic pragmatism could outweigh lingering mistrust. With India's deficit with China touching nearly $100 billion, the promise to rebalance trade was less about numbers than about intent. India wants to be seen as engaging and not retreating. Modi's parallel warmth with Vladimir Putin was equally striking. At a time when Russia is isolated from much of the West, public camaraderie with India reaffirmed the resilience of their partnership, especially in defense and in energy. The summit also carried larger geopolitical undertones. Xi's denunciation of Cold War mentality and Putin's attacks on NATO expansion and sanctions were predictable, but they gained resonance in a forum where over 20 leaders, including the UN Secretary General, were present. By bringing in Antonio Guterres, the SCO elevated its stature beyond a regional club to a platform with global visibility. It was a reminder that while Western alliances may dominate in the Atlantic, in Eurasia, the SCO is fast becoming the convening power. The immediate political context, however, was less harmonious. The Pahalgam terror attack in India cast a shadow over the proceedings, reviving the fault line between India and Pakistan. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif used the summit to project Pakistan as a victim of terrorism rather than a facilitator, but the effort fell flat. Unlike Modi's headline-making engagements with Xi and Putin, Sharif found himself largely sidelined with no comparable bilateral or breakthroughs to showcase. The optics reinforced Pakistan's diplomatic isolation, present at the table but peripheral to the summit's bigger conversations. For India, the Pahalgam attack made clear that counterterrorism must move beyond rhetoric, with RATs upgraded into a real enforcement tool. For Pakistan, participation at Tianjin was about staying engaged and avoiding further marginalization, especially as its weak economy leaves little leverage beyond presence. The Tianjin summit was more than ritual. It was a stress test of the SCO's future. A 2035 roadmap, new financing, and an India-China Thaw signaled fresh purpose. Even as China's dominance, India's caution, and Pakistan's unease exposed fault lines. What Tianjin proved is that SCO can no longer be dismissed as peripheral. It is evolving into a stage where the politics of Eurasia and the shape of global order intersect. The real question is whether this momentum survives once the cameras leave and the grind of implementation begins. That is all from us today. This is Garima, and you are watching The Asian Chronicle.